You know what I'm realizing is probably one of the most difficult concepts for me to ever wrap my mind around. Just how anyone could think that using me as an unwilling participant to whatever harebrained scheme that they got could potentially yield any type of positive results. Just for one simple factor. When has any plan that the success rate ends up hinging on somebody who is an unwilling participant because they understand the role that you want them to play in whatever your grand idea is, and your grand idea is fuck you, I'm gonna cash grab and get as much as I can, shaking you down, while simultaneously belittling you for it, while at the same time expecting an outcome that doesn't inevitably end up yielding physical violence. That's. I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around this. I don't fathom how that success rate will end up being, you know? Especially because of the factor that people act all big and bad when they're at a distance. They act all big and bad when they've had some type of perception of a power dynamic. But the reality is, let's go ahead and let's say, for example, some of the most dangerous men in history. Napoleon, Attila the Hun, Adolf Hitler, Mussolini. Alright? Do you know what factors that they all have in common? And it's not the first one that comes to your mind. It's that they've all met the great equalizer, death. Ultimately, a factor that most people, when watching coverage on the whole situation with Ukraine and Russia and all that they're not acknowledging, even with the shit throughout Putin's life that he's pulled. Alright? There are people taking bets on how whoever it is that finally goes in to take him out after that bullshit saber rattling, how they're gonna do it. You know? I mean, they gonna reverse Julius Caesar? Oh no, I'm not gonna stab you in the back, gonna stab you in the front. Gonna slide that knife right into your ribs. It's gonna be that way. Ultimately, point that I'm making is when you spent years provoking somebody that has been trying to do what they can to restrain themselves and that understand from firsthand experience, death is the great equalizer, no matter what moral fiber or whatever moral character that you had. So trying to spend your time trying to drag as much as you can out of trying to flex whatever superiority you perceive, that right there is, it's not a great self-preservation strategy, you know? Especially when you go and try to say, oh, need to go to counseling, need to work through your shit. It's like, well, you want to bring up past mistakes and everything, and the funny thing is, the one thing that a counselor's never pointed out to me, and the fact that you haven't wrapped your mind around while trying to look for any which way possible to prove that you're right, is you're constantly bringing up your dad and your mom and the abuse that you suffered when you were a kid, not being able to mentally get yourself out of it, while at the same time, what everyone around you has acknowledged that you haven't personally come to acceptance of and the realization of, is that your bullies died. Alright? Now that they have reached the grave, there is nothing that they could do to come back and cause the issues that they caused. So you going ahead and trying to, as an example, do what they did, to go ahead and try to prove some weird flex of that you're better than they were because at least you restrained yourself? No, you were never better than they were, because if you wanted to be better than they were, then you would have never abused me at all. But, yeah, apparently people don't really think of these things, especially when they're wanting to, live in glass houses and throw stones and, not realize, hey, I might just be repeatedly poking the wrong nerve over and over again, because this might be the nerve that ends up going ahead and causing that person that you've pushed too far to snap over the edge. So in your mind, they've endured it as long as they have, so they can continue enduring it, because they haven't reacted in the way that they've clarified with them almost snapping, that they will react if you don't lay off. Well, in their mind, they're trying to do it every time that they can to borrow from the future by hoping and dreaming for a better future that they're not getting abused in, that doesn't have you in it, and not hoping for the other alternative, which is them finally stabbing you, or whatever they end up using as the weapon. I mean, usually the point of a crime of passion factor is the person ends up losing complete and total self-control, which provokes somebody for 20 years. Yeah, they're gonna lose all self-control, and ultimately at that point, they've thrown their future away because they finally took care of the problem that you ended up presenting to the people around you by your perpetual abuse. And they're locked up because they did what they had to do to make sure that you couldn't do to anybody else what you did to them. So might really want to learn when and good timing to pull the reins back. Because if you don't pull the reins back when that person that's saying, hey, I can't deal with this anymore, if you push this through, your retirement will be a pine box. You ease up. You learn how to find that fucking grace that you never imagined could magically, reveal itself. And you do what you can to stop creating unnecessary obstacles, so that way that person trying to avoid from shortening your existence, well, leading them into a future of perpetual lockdown, you do what you can to stop trying to prevent them from removing themselves from the situation, because them removing themselves from the situation could just be what's preventing your obituary.